gunshots, a man's desperate cries, and a story that still doesn't add up. Meriwether Lewis was a national hero, a man who led America across the wilderness and into history. But in 1809, on a lonely Tennessee trail, his journey came to a violent, inexplicable end. He was just 35 years old. Was it madness or murder? If you're a fan of profound, historic, and timeless stories told in captivating detail, welcome to History. We upload twice a week, so if that sounds good to you, be sure to like and subscribe. Meriwether Lewis was born in 1774 in the wilds of Virginia, a child of the untamed frontier. From an early age, he was drawn to the outdoors, wandering forests, tracking game, and studying nature like it was a second language. But responsibility found him young. His father died when he was just 5 years old, leaving the family plantation in the hands of his mother. By the time he was a teenager, Lewis was managing the farm, overseeing crops, livestock, and the enslaved workers his family owned. He was reliable, intelligent, and ambitious, but restless. Farming was not enough. He needed more. At 20, he joined the U.S. Army, quickly proving himself as a disciplined and sharp-minded officer. Within a few years, he had earned the trust of powerful men, and in 1801, at the age of 27, President Thomas Jefferson personally selected him as his White House secretary. Working directly under Jefferson, Lewis handled sensitive documents, sat in on high-level meetings, and was deeply involved in discussions about the newly acquired Louisiana Territory. The Louisiana Purchase, finalized in 1803, doubled the size of the United States, adding over 828,000 square miles of land from France for just $15 million. It was one of the greatest land deals in history, but it also expanded the role of the federal government in ways that contradicted Thomas Jefferson's usual support for states' rights. Many questioned how a man who championed limited government could justify such an enormous federal acquisition. But for Jefferson, the opportunity to secure the continent for American expansion was too important to pass up. Jefferson saw in Lewis a brilliant mind, a man of science and strategy, and when it came time to chart the vast unknown of the Louisiana Purchase, he knew exactly who to trust. "Your mission," Jefferson told Lewis, "is to map the land, find a route to the Pacific, and establish relations with the native tribes, and above all, bring back knowledge." Lewis knew the enormity of the task and that he couldn't do it alone. For this mission, he turned to a man he trusted implicitly, William Clark. Clark, a fellow soldier and frontiersman, was everything Lewis needed in a partner: experienced, level-headed, and an expert in map-making and leadership. The two had served together in the military and shared a bond built on trust and survival. Clark would act as the co-leader of what would become one of the greatest expeditions in American history. The Lewis and Clark Expedition, officially known as the Corps of Discovery, set out in 1804. The journey ahead was perilous. More than 8,000 miles of untamed wilderness stretching from the Mississippi River to the Pacific Ocean. It would take them through uncharted lands, across mountains that no Americans had ever seen, and into encounters with Native American tribes who could either be allies or adversaries. The odds were against them, but Lewis and Clark led with skill, strategy, and resilience. The challenges were immediate. Rapids on the Missouri River nearly capsized their boats, with one vessel tipping dangerously as a sudden storm caught them off guard. Bitter cold in North Dakota left men frostbitten and near death as they endured a brutal winter on the frontier. Wild animals, including enormous grizzly bears, lurked in the shadows as they traveled through the plains of Montana, forcing the men into desperate fights for survival. Lewis himself survived a near-fatal fall from a cliff near the Great Falls of the Missouri River, only saving himself by driving his knife into the rocky ledge to stop his descent. He was also once mistaken for an elk by a nearsighted member of the expedition who accidentally shot him in the thigh. Lewis meticulously documented everything they encountered. His journals detailed never-before-seen landscapes, strange new species, and the complex cultures of the native tribes. He described the pronghorn antelope, an antelope faster than they had ever imagined, and the grizzly bear, a beast far more formidable than expected. He noted the bitterroot flower in Montana and the towering western red cedar trees along the Pacific coast. Every observation, every discovery was carefully recorded, knowledge that would help shape the nation's understanding of its new frontier. He described vast plains stretching to the horizon, towering Rocky Mountains, and rivers so clear they seemed unreal. He wrote of great herds of bison that darkened the land and the incredible diversity of plants and animals that would become crucial to scientific research. Perhaps the most critical moment of their journey came when they encountered the Shoshone tribe. They desperately needed horses to cross the Rocky Mountains before winter sealed off their path. It was Sacagawea, a young Shoshone woman traveling with them, who changed their fate. She recognized the tribe's leader. It was her brother. Because of her, the Corps secured the horses they needed and continued their journey west. Without that moment, the expedition might have failed. When they reached the Pacific Ocean in 1805, it was a triumph. Against all odds, they had made it. They had mapped the land, forged relationships with native tribes, and returned with knowledge that would change America forever. Lewis had achieved what seemed impossible. But despite their monumental achievement, public reception was mixed. Some hailed Lewis and Clark as heroes, but others questioned whether the costly expedition had been worth it. The expedition had cost over $38,000, a hefty sum for its time. Some in Congress wondered whether it had been money well spent, arguing that the land was uncharted, the native tribes unpredictable, and the practical benefits unclear. Others saw it as an unnecessary federal expansion, reinforcing concerns about government overreach. Lewis expected glory upon his return, but what he found was something else entirely. Instead of the hero's welcome he had imagined, he was met with indifference, political turmoil, and bureaucratic resistance. Thomas Jefferson still had faith in them, though, appointing him governor of the Louisiana Territory, a position that should have cemented his legacy. Instead, he walked into a political nightmare. The Louisiana Territory was lawless, riddled with corruption, fraud, and infighting. Lewis, a man of honor and precision, found himself drowning in accusations of financial mismanagement. The people of the Louisiana Territory, many of whom were French and Spanish settlers, resented being governed by an outsider. Corrupt officials already entrenched in power saw Lewis as a threat to their influence. Even in Washington, his reports were delayed, his funding withheld, and his character questioned. The same government that had sent him to explore a continent now seemed eager to cast him aside. The pressure crushed him. He began drinking heavily. He took laudanum, an opiate, to cope with the stress. His letters to friends became erratic, filled with paranoia and frustration. He knew people were plotting against him, but was it real, or was his mind betraying him? Now in his early 30s, some believe Lewis suffered from what we now recognize as bipolar disorder, a condition not understood at the time. Others think that he was suffering from the lingering effects of malaria, which can cause confusion, hallucinations, and paranoia. By 1809, from his headquarters in St. Louis, he continued to fight relentless accusations of financial mismanagement and whispers of corruption in the Louisiana Territory. All of that had placed a big target on his back. His political enemies saw an opportunity to discredit him, and even within the government, there were those eager to see him fail. At the same time, his health was deteriorating. Some accounts suggest he had contracted that malaria while traveling south, which, combined with his existing struggles, left him weak and vulnerable. Determined to clear his name, he gathered a set of crucial documents, proof, he believed, that he was innocent. He set out for Washington, D.C., traveling the infamous Natchez Trace, a rugged and dangerous trail through Tennessee. The night was lit by a near full moon, the Tennessee wilderness stretching endlessly in every direction. Lewis arrived at Grinder's Stand, weary from the road, his body weakened by illness, his mind restless. He wore a traveler's duster, blue and white stripe, the dust of the trail clinging to him. Alone, he asked the innkeeper, Priscilla Grinder, for lodging, explaining that his servants were not too far behind. He brought his saddle inside and requested spirits, but drank very little. Something was off. He was exhausted, anxious, and according to the innkeeper's wife, acting very strangely. Priscilla watched as Lewis spoke to himself, pacing, sweating. As the evening wore on, Lewis grew more agitated. He paced back and forth, muttering to himself, his movements sudden and erratic. When he sat for supper, he barely ate before rising abruptly, speaking in a violent manner, his face flushed. Then just as suddenly, he calmed down. He lit a pipe, pulled a chair to the doorway, and sat staring at the moonlit sky. "Madam, this is a very pleasant evening," he said softly, before taking another slow draw from his pipe. He refilled it, looking up at the moonlight. What a sweet evening it is. Despite the bed prepared for him, Lewis insisted on sleeping on the floor, calling his servant to bring his bearskins and buffalo rope. Priscilla, unsettled by his strange behavior, took her children to the nearby kitchen house to sleep, leaving Lewis alone in the main cabin. But she couldn't rest. Through the chinks in the log walls, she could hear him pacing again, speaking to himself, his words fast and frenzied like a lawyer arguing his case. Then, in the middle of the night, the silence shattered. A pistol shot, a heavy thud, then a weak and desperate cry, "Oh, Lord." A second gunshot rang out. Moments later, Lewis staggered to the kitchen house door, his voice strained and desperate. "Oh, madam, give me some water and heal my wounds." But the door remained barred. Inside, Priscilla and her children huddled in terror. The household was too frightened to respond. Through the cracks in the logs, under the glow of the bright moonlight, Priscilla watched as Lewis collapsed against a stump outside. He struggled to his feet, crawled toward a tree, then sat motionless for a time before dragging himself back inside. Sometime later, he emerged again, making his way to the well. She heard him scraping at the bucket with a gourd, desperate for water, yet unable to pull it up. He was dying, and no one came to help. After nearly 2 hours of agony, Priscilla sent her children to fetch Lewis's servants from the barn. The servants had been there the entire night. Had they heard the shots? If they had, why hadn't they come sooner? Were they afraid? Had they seen something they weren't willing to admit? Or had they been ordered to stay away? They found him inside the cabin, lying on the bed, still conscious. A piece of his forehead had been blown away, exposing the brain. He pulled back his robe to reveal another bullet wound in his side. Weak but defiant, he begged them to take his rifle and finish the job. "I am no coward," he rasped, "but I am so strong, so hard to die." No one would lift a gun or knife to him. 2 hours later, just as the sun rose above the trees, Meriwether Lewis of the famed Lewis and Clark expedition took his final breath. The official ruling? Suicide. Thomas Jefferson, heartbroken, accepted this conclusion, later writing that Lewis's mind had been too sensitive for the struggles he faced. But despite his private sorrow, there was no grand funeral, no national mourning. His death, like his final days, was shrouded in silence. Lewis had struggled with depression and drugs, and his life had unraveled in the months leading up to his death. It made sense, except it didn't. His documents, the ones that were supposed to clear his name, vanished. If these papers proved his innocence, who had the most to gain from making them disappear? If it was a robbery, why were there only certain things taken? His money was left behind, but the most incriminating items were gone. Was this about theft or something more calculated? Had Lewis been carrying something someone wanted to keep hidden? Was he in possession of documents exposing corruption in the Louisiana Territory? Had he uncovered land disputes or financial misconduct that threatened powerful men? Or was there something even more damning? Something that made him a target in the final days of his life? Over the years, theories have swirled. Was he silenced by his political enemies? He had exposed fraud in the Louisiana Territory, making powerful enemies. Was his death an assassination? Was it a robbery? Some accounts suggest he had been paranoid, hinting that he believed he was being followed in the days before his death. Today, his grave stands near a grinder stand along what is now the Natchez Trace Parkway. Lewis never married or had children, leaving no direct heirs to carry on his name. Travelers stopped there, staring at the lonely marker, wondering what really happened that night in 1809. Meriwether Lewis conquered the wilderness, but in the end, the shadows claimed him. And somewhere in the Tennessee woods, the truth remains buried, just like the papers he carried and the secrets they might have revealed.
New Heath Story episodes drop twice a week only on the Jim Heath channel. If you'd like to help keep Heath Story going, consider becoming a member. Click below to join.